In the previous portion, Mykets, we have Pharaoh's dream, where the 7 fat cows are devoured by the 7 lean cows, and in a second dream, the same happens with the 7 good ears of corn, which are devoured by the lean ears. Pharaoh's advisors are unable to interpret the dream, and one of Pharaoh's cupbearers remembers Joseph in prison, who had interpreted a dream, and everything happened just as Joseph had said. Pharaoh orders that Joseph be summoned, and he is prepared to stand in Pharaoh's presence to interpret the dream. Joseph credits God with the power to interpret the dream, and not only interprets the dream, but also gives instructions on how Pharaoh could organize himself to endure the coming period. Pharaoh appoints Joseph as governor over all of Egypt to implement the plan. The years of abundance and scarcity occur as Joseph had predicted, and famine also strikes Canaan, forcing Joseph's brothers to go down to Egypt to buy food. Joseph's brothers do not recogenicize him, and he tests them. Joseph accuses his brothers of being spies and keeps Simeon as a hostage, while his brothers return to Canaan and are told that Simeon will only be freed when they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, with them. The famine worsens, forcing Jacob to send his sons again to Egypt, but this time with Benjamin, the youngest. When Joseph's brothers arrive in Egypt, he tests them again, but treats them well and shows favoritism toward Benjamin. Joseph orders his silver cup to be hidden in Benjamin's luggage to accuse him of theft and thus force the separation of his youngest brother from the older ones. This is a summary of the previous events. The story of Joseph and his brothers reaches a dramatic and emotional climax, where the tensions accumulated over the years dissolve into moments of forgiveness, revelation, and reconciliation. The turning point occurs when Joseph places the final test upon his brothers by accusing Benjamin of theft, creating a great dilemma. Joseph had ordered that his silver cup be hidden in Benjamin's sack, leading to his arrest, while the other brothers, anxious and desperate, return to face Joseph's judgment. In a gesture of courage and repentance, Judah approaches Joseph and, with a heart full of sorrow, offers himself as a slave in place of his brother Benjamin, declaring that their father Jacob would die of heartbreak if he lost his youngest son. Judah explains the tragedy that would follow, recounting how their father struggled to recover his lost sons, and asks Joseph to spare Benjamin for the sake of Jacob. Judah's sincerity, the weight of his words, and the depth of his transformation deeply move Joseph. Those words, filled with pain and regret, reveal that his brothers had repented for the mistake they made years ago. Joseph, then, can no longer contain his emotions. With a cry that breaks the tension, he orders everyone to leave and reveals his true identity to his brothers. "I am Joseph, the one you sold." He completely surprises them, leaving them stunned and unable to react. The moment is filled with emotion, not only because of the revelation but also because of Joseph's abundant mercy. He forgives them for everything they have done, telling them that, despite their actions, God used that suffering to save many lives during the famine. After this moment of forgiveness, Joseph instructs his brothers to quickly return and tell their father Jacob that he is alive and that they should settle in Egypt, where he will welcome them. The brothers rush back, still in disbelief over what they have just experienced, and bring the news to Jacob. When Jacob hears the news that Joseph is alive and is the ruler of Egypt, he can hardly believe it. But upon seeing the chariots and gifts Joseph sent, his heart fills with joy, and he decides to go to Egypt. God, in a vision during the night, speaks to Jacob and tells him not to fear going down to Egypt, for there a great nation will be made from him. With God's assurance and guidance, Jacob and his family, now many hundreds of people, begin the journey to Egypt. They leave the land of Canaan, with their caravans loaded with goods and animals, and make the long journey. Each of Jacob's sons, their wives, children, and grandchildren gather in a large crowd for the trip. The journey is a mix of sorrow and anticipation, but also of relief, as Jacob's family would finally be saved from the famine that ravaged Canaan. They arrive in Goshen, a fertile region in Egypt, and settle there. Joseph, with great honor, receives his father and brothers and presents them to Pharaoh, who welcomes them and offers them the best land in Egypt. From that moment, Jacob's family prospers in Egypt. Joseph ensures they will have everything they need. The land of Goshen becomes a place of abundance, and Jacob's great family begins to multiply quickly. Jacob, in his old age, blesses Pharaoh, recognizing the greatness of God in his life and in the life of his family. He remembers the pain he suffered, but sees God's hand guiding his steps to Egypt, where his descendants would be preserved. Meanwhile, the devastating famine that affects Egypt and the land of Canaan impacts all the Egyptians, and eventually, people begin selling their lands and even their own bodies to survive. Joseph, with wisdom and relentless management, buys all the land of Egypt in Pharaoh's name, ensuring that the government has total control over the resources. The people, now landless, become Pharaoh's servants. But in exchange, Joseph guarantees that they will have food, and their survival will be ensured. He institutes a system in which 1/5 of the harvest is given to Pharaoh, while the other 4/5 belong to the people so they can sow and feed their families. As the land of Egypt transforms under the famine and Joseph's power, Jacob's family settles firmly, thriving in Goshen. They multiply and become a great people, as God promised Jacob. The backdrop of the story is an extraordinary transformation. The sons of Jacob, who sold their brother Joseph in an act of betrayal, now become part of a great story of redemption. Joseph, who was wronged and separated from his family, now becomes the ruler of a nation, working as God's instrument to save his family and many other lives. The story of forgiveness, reconciliation, and divine providence culminates in this new beginning for Jacob's family, who, despite their mistakes and suffering, are now immeasurably blessed.